Joining us now to break down the state of the economy and where we go from here is Grover Norquist, the founder and president of Americans for Tax Reform. So, Grover, I'm really glad to have you on the program tonight because whether it's elections, whether it's the debate on Capitol Hill, really, it all falls under the umbrella of building back this economy to a point of where it was before this pandemic. So, in your opinion, how do we do that?
First, do no harm. Don't do something stupid like raise taxes or come up with new regulations or spend a great deal of money. The strength of the economy, we just saw the report come out from the government that, the average income, the median income for a family of four jumped about 10% in the first 3 years of President Trump's presidency, and only went up about 5%, 3% in 8 years under Obama. So we saw strong wage growth, many new jobs, a lot of trade and production and manufacturing because we reduced taxes, we deregulated, and we stopped doing silly things. And we had an energy creation policy, not an energy destruction policy, and became an energy power in the world. We just have to end the lockdown as quickly as you can safely, and we go back to the super economy that the Republicans and Trump created with lower taxes and less regulation. Don't get in the way of getting better.
And in the same way that you're laying out right now, it does seem like we have a guideline, if you will, of how to build back the economy. But I also think that we can say that we have a guideline for how not to build back the economy. We can look back to 2008 and the anemic growth that came out of that recession. And of course, former Vice President Joe Biden was part of those efforts. And now we see him on the campaign trail talking about increasing the corporate tax rate, even telling some Americans that their taxes may go up. Does that speak to the problem that you're talking about?
Yes, everything that increased the value of your 401k, everything that created jobs, everything that increased wages, everything that increased your life savings as the stock market has gone up from where it was under Biden and Obama, came from lower taxes and less regulation. Biden's solution to everything is more regulations and higher taxes. He wants to take the corporate rate from 21%, this is Biden, higher than Communist China's. Communist China has 25%. Biden sometimes says 28%, sometimes says 35%, but he wants it higher than China so that investors looking at taxes will move their investment from the United States to China. That's not a smart move. It's how we got in this mess in the first place, and Biden was there when stupid was first put together.
And I do want to build on that point because we'll hear that from the Trump campaign, and they've already really been saying that Biden, for example, is cozy to China. He had that infamous comment that they're not eating our lunch. But I think a lot of American workers in this country don't think that's necessarily the case. I mean, they could look back to, for example, Biden's support of NAFTA in the 90s. And I think a lot of middle Americans, in the Rust Belt especially, have a not favorable view of that decision within itself. So does Joe Biden represent almost the type of neoliberal policies that were rejected in 2016?
Well, it's worse than that. Biden is a cork that floats on the liberal democratic ocean. And when the waves go one way, he used to dine out with segregationists and talk about the South a lot. And then when they were trying to be moderate because they kept losing the White House to Republicans. Then he said he was a moderate. He started this campaign saying he's the most left-wing guy running. When he endorsed him, Obama said Biden was the most left-wing guy running. He was running against Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. And he has now signed on a surrender document to Sanders, which Sanders got all of the policies he ever imagined in his wildest dreams signed off on by Biden. So Biden's not a neoliberal or an old school Democrat. He is what his advisors and others tell him he needs to be the most left-wing guy running to win the primary, and that's what he'll do.
And I think that we've seen this in recent weeks. I mean, it was just last week where he was a little bit reversing course when it came to his NAFTA decision. But I think the bigger picture is when it comes to the protests and the violence on the streets as well. We've seen him do a pivot from what you're talking about right now, where he was much more supportive a couple months ago than he is right now. But Grover, before I let you go too, yesterday the World Trade Organization said that the U.S. and their implementation of tariffs on China may have been an illegal action, or at least the World Trade Organization rules. Do you think that the implementation of tariffs is something that will continue after this coronavirus pandemic and help American workers, or do you think that's not the right avenue to go down either when it comes to holding China accountable?
Well, I'm generally not a fan of tariffs because tariffs are just taxes at the border. And when you raise taxes on French wine, that's paid by American consumers, not by French people, but by Americans putting out cash and spending more. And the same thing with steel or aluminum or anything. So it raises prices to Americans. The president is quite correct that a lot of deals have been signed where we allow other countries to steal our intellectual technology, as China has done, to make counterfeit products that Americans invented, to reproduce Microsoft software without paying for it. And the World Trade Organization has not helped fight those. And where other companies keep our prices of pharmaceutical drugs that we invent, they say if you don't give them to us at low prices, lower than you would, we will steal your stuff and make it ourselves. So our trade agreements that we've agreed to allow all sorts of loopholes to damage America in some of its most productive, high value added products, pharmaceutical drugs, movies, software, high tech. That needs to be fixed. I don't know what the best counterpunch is. I like talking about the Uyghurs and making China exposed in front of the rest of the world for its attacks on human rights. I think that would get their attention even more sometimes than tariffs.
Yeah, and I think that when we talk about holding China accountable for whether it's the Uyghurs, whether it's for their response to the global pandemic, whether it's for the stealing of intellectual property, undermining U.S. manufacturing, I mean, the list goes on. And I don't think it's only the U.S. who really is bearing the brunt of these actions. I think it's a global response as well. And I think that when this settles down, when we're out of this pandemic once and for all, I'm willing to bet that there's more of a global response to China's actions, because it's not just the United States who's now facing all these ramifications from that as well. But Grover Norquist, I really appreciate you coming on the program tonight, breaking down how we can bring back this economy and what it should look like going forward. Thank you very much for joining us.
Good to be with you.